Hi, I'm Marty Burris, and I'll be talking to you about navigating your PM career today. So here's a brief agenda. First, I'll go over an introduction, a little bit about who I am and what I do today. Then I'll go into the key takeaways and the things that I want you to get out of today's session. After that, I'll break down the different types of product management, and then we'll take that information and it'll help us do some career mapping. And we'll career map at the early, mid, and kind of late to end career product management levels. And then we'll just wrap it up and I'll give you some of the things that I want you to remember as you're thinking through your own career and navigating it. So here's me. I'm Marty and I've been a product manager since 2016. Currently, I'm at Salesforce as a senior manager and I manage a product called the Heroku Marketplace. I really enjoy it, and if you've ever used it, that's me. So give me feedback as well. I'm always interested in how people's experiences with the software are. I'm also founder of an initiative called Folding Chair, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. I'm an avid traveler. The picture on the right is from my last travels to a basketball game. Can't really go too many places these days. And then I'm also, I'd say, an avid tech enthusiast as well. I'm somebody who really cares about technology, not only as a kind of career field, but also product management as a discipline, how we fall into that. I care a lot about where technology is going and how it's opening up careers for different people, how technology affects privilege in the smallest parts of technology that we don't always think about. So those are some of the things that I like to talk about and think about. So if you're ever wanting to have conversations about that, please reach out to me. I'd love to talk about it. So before I get started, I do want to talk a little bit more about what Folding Chair is. Folding Chair is my initiative that I started back in 2018 to strategically create space for other product managers. It's really focused on helping underrepresented product managers, typically Black and Latino, get their first or second role in product management. I like to come in at the place where they're struggling to get their first interview, or they failed several interviews and they're not really sure why. That's where we come in and we really are able to help them deliver and pass those interviews. And the goal is really to create more space for others. If we diversify the pipeline of product managers, we ultimately diversify technology and the things that are being built for the world. And everyone knows diverse perspectives creates diverse products. Graduates of Folding Chairs cohorts have gone to Facebook, Google, Workday, McDonald's, Microsoft, Capital One, and probably 20 other companies I couldn't fit on the slide. So that is a little bit more about it. I do want to say that currently it is full. I do not have any more space in the cohorts for the foreseeable future. But if you're interested or you want to stay tuned on what's going on, there will be a website up live soon where you can submit and let me know your interest, as well as just letting me know on Facebook, or I'm sorry, on LinkedIn that you're interested in or you want to learn more. So the key takeaways today are pretty simple. Just have three. The first thing I want to provide to you is just a high-level overview of product management. No matter if you're currently an existing product manager and you're trying to figure out your next move, or you're looking to get into product for the first time, hopefully when you finish this presentation today, you have a general overview of what types of product management there are and where you fit in. The other thing I want you to know is all the different career options and the different ways that you can take it. And the last thing that I want you to be able to do is be able to create your own tactical career map with the things I've provided to you. So I'll do some generic career mapping, but really what I'd like you to be able to do is to take the things that I presented and develop your own career map where you can kind of evaluate where you are versus where you want to go. A piece of advice that I always give people is you should always look at your career holistically. Never look at your career for where you are today or where you work today. Look at what you want to accomplish and what is keeping you from getting there. So today is going to be very broad. It won't be focused on a specific company. You're not going to hear me say, stay at your company for the next 10 years, but you're also not going to hear me tell you to straight up quit. There's always different ways to approach it. But I do want everyone, as they're thinking about career, and if you're listening to this presentation, to have a very wide view, because I think that leans towards the most success later in life. So jumping into the overview, there are 3 categories and 6 roughly overview types of product management. And I can guarantee that if we talk to 10 product managers, they give you even more than what I have here. But I think this is a good starting point that people can probably identify with and figure out where they fall into. And you can always be a mix of these. You're not going to necessarily be one or the other. It's not that cookie cutter. You might be a little bit of both in some categories, or just one or the other. In my case, I've been both an enterprise and a consumer product manager. I've mostly done external and I've mostly done functional. But you could also be the complete opposite and be a technical consumer product manager who focus on internal things, and that would be fine too. So the goal of this is just to understand what these are and where you fall into, or where you think you may want to fall into. What I'm not going to talk about is the difference between a hardware and a software product manager. I think today's call is focused on more software product management, but if you're interested in that, I can definitely give you some additional information about it. But today is really just focused on these really three categories, and then how we can use those to do some career mapping. So the first type is consumer and enterprise. So consumer is anyone who delivers value to anybody, anywhere. If you're working on a consumer product, or if you're a consumer product manager, whatever you're working on is probably something you can show to someone on your phone. It is something that people would understand pretty quickly if it's consumer, because it's probably meant for the world at large. This is probably the most popular type of consumer product management as well. I feel like everybody when they say they want to be product manager, they're really talking about consumer, not realizing there are so many other variations and types of product out there. So some examples of products that you might see in the consumer space are Instagram. Think like the feature of Instagram that lets you post a picture with a caption for your friends to like and comment. That's consumer. Amazon Marketplace, like Prime. You going onto a website, or you're onto your device, ordering something and it coming to your house. Google search, anyone in the world can type something into that Google bar and get a response. And then Microsoft Suite, like think Word, Docs, Excel, that kind of thing. Word documents, Excel. I can't even remember all the different things in the suite, right? But that would be typical consumer. Enterprise is going to be the inverse of that. You're delivering value from one business to another. Your end customer and user is probably another company. And so enterprise product managers are really focused on creating business software. And if you're an enterprise PM, or if you've interacted with enterprise software, you've probably done it at work. That's the best. You may have done it in other contexts, but that's probably most commonly where you've used enterprise software. So I've given you the same examples you see on consumer, and the things on the right are actually the enterprise or business grade versions of the products that you use on the left. So everyone uses Instagram, but as a business, you can also leverage Instagram for ads and for their shop functionality to leverage and link out to different things that you might be selling on an external site. And you can pay for that service. Your business would pay Instagram, which is a business, and that would be the B2B relationship. Then there's also Amazon Web Services, which is pretty much the foundation of every tech company, and really the internet and whole, right? But that is very much so enterprise thing. The average person could spin up their own small instance of a web service, of an Amazon Web Service, but it's really meant to do large scale products and large scale functionality like what you would see in enterprise. Same with Google Cloud Platform. It's really Google's version of AWS. So you can also do the same thing there. And you see Microsoft Suite listed again. The reason I listed it again is the concept of a mixed use product. I mean, it's really cool if you can get into one of those. So Microsoft Suite is something you probably use since elementary school, or even earlier, right? Something that allows you to do all this type of Excel document, word processing, that kind of stuff, right? But companies have that same need too. So Microsoft sells that same product to companies, and they have special features enabled at the enterprise or B2B level for companies to be able to leverage the Microsoft Suite as well. And that is what I call a mixed use product, where when you're building things and features, you are probably building with consumer and enterprise end users or customers in mind. The next type is internal versus external. So internal product managers are delivering value from one business unit to another business unit within the company. Sometimes you hear this called IT product management, and it's often infrastructure teams are in this category as well. So a lot of companies have like teams that focus on like core infrastructure, like think of like an ML engine or AI, something like that. Those but they're building that, and then another team actually builds the application level piece or the UI piece, and that would be the external PMs. So that is really where this goes. The other part of this is thinking about companies that are going to fall into this. So Target has like infrastructure teams, right, that build like APIs and things that connect you from when something is sold to when something is sold to when a person has to get it in the warehouse, and that piece, right? They might be sending different types of information that might go from one team to another team. In other words, an infrastructure team. The other side of that is like Facebook Enterprise, right? They have that team as well, and that builds all of their products that they use internally around finance, HR, et cetera, right? And they build their own proprietary stuff, and they call it the Facebook Enterprise team. Salesforce has the same thing as well, where it's both proprietary software as well as teams that might be integrating things that Salesforce has purchased, like let's say like different things that they've purchased, like their HR solution or their finance solution, and they're responsible for doing the development of that as well. So those would be internal teams. External teams are what most PMs fall into, and probably what most people think of as product management as well. And that is the consumer-facing stuff. That's the stuff that you can show someone on your phone or on your computer, right? So Target online store would be the external team at Target. Facebook Blue app, or just the generic Facebook app, would be the external version of Facebook Enterprise. And then Salesforce Customer 360, which is just the wheel, that if you've ever seen that, is the suite of Salesforce external applications. So that is your difference there. Then there's technical versus functional. So technical product management manages technical or specialized products, okay? So technical product managers are often on infrastructure teams, and they're doing specialized things like VR, autonomous vehicles, machine learning, artificial intelligence. And typically, if you're a technical product manager, you have to have an engineering background or some type of specialized technical background to be able to do technical product management. There are also some companies that prioritize technical product management over functional. For a long time, Google was one of those companies where they did not really hire the concept of a functional product manager. You had to have a more technical or computer science background. In the last couple of years, they've changed focus, and they've also changed their interview process too, to allow functional product managers to come in. Microsoft is another one that is still very heavy on the technical space. They still do prefer an engineering background for their product managers, but like I said, they've made strides towards functional. And Apple as well is still a very heavy technical product manager, engineering product manager. And that's also because that is a software and hardware play together. So think like an iPhone, right? You're building software that goes onto a hardware device. So you have to have a bit more of a technical understanding and a bit more technical acumen to be successful in those types of teams and organizations. Then there's functional. A lot of PM roles these days fall into functional PM. And basically, you are managing UI level or app level things, right? Whereas a technical person might be managing things at the server level, the infrastructure, really at the lowest level, right? And a lot of the things that you're working on are going to sit on top of the things that the technical product management team has delivered to you. So PMs in this space are really dependent, I would say, on technical product managers. Some companies don't split. Some companies have, just one type of product manager. But most of the companies, I think that trend's pretty common today, that you have technical product managers who are in one part of the company, and then functional, and they work very closely together to deliver things. So you have functional in both Google, Microsoft, and Salesforce. I would say Salesforce, by and large, is mostly functional PMs. And that is kind of where you can go with that. So now that you've kind of understood the 3 different categories and the 6 different types of product management, kind of identify with yourself, like, where do you think you are and where you want to go? It's easy. Some things are going to be easier for you to get into versus others. And it really just depends on where you're at today and what kind of skills you've developed. Let's say you're an engineer, it may be a lot easier for you to get into a technical product management team. Versus if you're coming straight out of like MBA or grad school or even undergrad, you might want to consider functional PM. Odds are, if you don't know how to code, you probably should be functional. And that's probably a good way to split that up. If you are somebody who does know how to code, you do have some more technical acumen, you probably could, try for a technical role or move into a technical role. So that is your split. So now I'm going to go into the different levels of career product management, and we'll start to do some of that mapping I was talking about earlier. So the first level I'm going to talk about is early level. What I'm going to do for you here is define what early level looks like at different companies, what those terms are, and what the prerequisite is if you are looking to get into early. So today I would define an early career product manager, someone with less than 3 years of experience, and they're looking for their first or maybe second product role. Sometimes your second product role can be a more senior level role. It really just depends on the experience you got in the first role. But typically it's 3 years of experience or less. You're gonna see this called a lot of different things. If you were searching for a role or you wanna have a little bit more context, you might see it called associate product manager, a senior product management, or senior associate, a product manager, I'm sorry. If you're at companies like Amazon or Facebook that have everyone as product managers, and then there's internal leveling, it's either like usually L4 or L5. If you're at Microsoft, and where it's a number system, it could be anywhere from like a 58 to a 60. At the early level, you really have limited ownership or scope. When you're first getting in, that's typical. You might have opportunities early on to really drive impact, but by and large, typically an associate or a senior associate or someone in that first role, they're either in a rotational, they're just learning, they're getting really small projects, the thing within the thing within the thing to be able to manage, right? There's a high emphasis on product ownership, or if you're familiar with like basic agile methodologies, like the idea of like you're owning something as far as like building out requirements and that kind of piece, that's all very much so at the early level. And you're probably only really focused on that. I will say too, early career starting to trend towards new graduates. I'm seeing a trend where undergrads are getting into product management straight out of college, whereas just when I got into product maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, that was not a thing. Companies would not hire straight out of undergrad. There was this belief that you had to have more experience to be able to do it, but I'm seeing a lot of companies start to build that pipeline even earlier. I will say most roles, I wouldn't say it's popular yet, but if you're thinking about it, it is becoming a thing. And if you look closely, you can find roles at that undergraduate level. Most of the time, if you're at like the MBA or graduate level, there are always roles for that at pretty much any tech company, and you'll see them each spring and fall. I would say early career PMs are also highly supervised. You're not going to get a whole lot of freedom to fail. You really got to earn that. And they're super focused on execution. So you're not going to get a whole lot of opportunity to do, and you might, I'm talking about like kind of like the happy path, right? Depending on your company, if you're at a startup versus a large company, you're going to have different experiences, right? But like usually you're really highly focused on execution. Just deliver this thing. Don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about how it's marketed. Don't worry about if it's made money. In some cases, don't even worry about adoption. Literally just work with your engineers and ship this. That's it. Often I get asked like, what are prerequisite careers that you can do to get into product management? So I kind of listed a few below, right? So consultancy is actually really great, especially if you are more of a technical consultant or you work on technical solutions or like in the digital space of like some of the big consulting firms. That can be a great prerequisite into product management, as well as just being a software engineer, being a QA. If you're on a Scrum team and you get to QA things, you actually really learned a lot about functionality and how things are going to flow together. So that can be a really great prerequisite as well. Some types of program management, not all. I always tell people project management is not a good indicator of whether you can be a product manager, but depending on how program management is defined, it can be. So it's really specific. If you're a product owner, some companies still do that. They have the idea of a product owner who is separate from the product manager. So if you have that title or you own that title, that's an opportunity. Definitely you're a data scientist. that understanding of data and how things move can be very beneficial in a product career, as well as someone who's a recent graduate or someone who's got the role of like a product specialist, meaning maybe they work with the product manager or with the product team. They might do some small things, might be focused on like writing documentation and things like that, but they're still learning, and that's something that you can leverage as well. So now I want to talk a little bit about how do you find those early career roles and when do you know it's time to leave. So you're looking for opportunities to leverage your current experience. An easy way to get into it is if you're already at a tech company or a company that has product management, try to do an internal transfer. That's really the easiest way to get it. If you're realizing those things aren't going to be an option for you, consider some additional training, like going to product school, and then maybe, you know, if you are one of those Black or Latino product managers and you want to take the next step, you can maybe work with something like Voting Chair or other initiatives like us. If you have an MBA or a graduate degree that also can help you get in, I don't recommend going to get an MBA to get into product management. I think there's a lot of teaching out there already that can help you. So you can go to product school in lieu of getting a graduate degree. And it really just depends on where you want to go and what companies you want to work for. Some companies still highly value MBAs for product managers, or other companies have realized it probably is not a huge determinant as to whether a product manager will be successful. So you really have to kind of figure that piece out for yourself. But those are some kind of key things in helping you find those first roles. Now, when you're done with that first role, here are kind of maybe some things that you should be able to have on a resume. You should have delivered 3 to 5 key features or products. You should be at about the 2 or 3 year mark. I'm usually not someone who cares about years of experience, but when it comes to product management, because it can be so make or break, you really don't want to start looking until you've done it for about 2 years, because that kind of shows you've created some depth into it, especially if you're getting into it for the first time. After that, you can actually move really quickly through your career depending on what kind of opportunities you get, you know, to do impactful work. But that initial early level role, at least try to get 2 years of experience in there before you try to go for a more senior level role. You've, at the early stage, probably have developed at least your first feature from end to end, being conception through delivery. You've done the research, you worked, and you built something that didn't exist. And then you took something that didn't exist that was an abstract problem and you broke it down and were able to deliver value in the way, you know, software should be delivered, right? At the end of early career, ideally you've managed a couple Scrum teams. Maybe you've managed 2 or 3. And so you're used to working with different engineers, different types, and you know how to get an engineering team up and going and delivering. You have a deep understanding of circles, and circles comes from one of the popular product books out there, Decode and Conquer. But if you have a deep understanding of circles, that would be a great understanding. And circles is basically how you take problems and break them down. And everyone has their own variation of it. But if you've got a good understanding of how to take an abstract problem, break it down to size, and come up with good solutions, then you're probably ready to do something a little bit more. And then if you have just a deeper understanding of now the software development lifecycle as well, like how things go from ideas through figuring out how to put them on a roadmap, prioritize that roadmap, prioritize a feature, get it delivered, and all the pieces that happen after delivery. Like once you have just an understanding of that, you're probably ready for something else. So if you were doing your own career map, this is kind of how I would hope it to look, right? You have a start, and that's where you are now, a goal of where you should be, where you want to be, and then a wrap up. So you now know that you've completed what you set to do in this stage of your career, right? So if you're just starting out, you want to identify the type of PM that you are, right? Does it make sense to be consumer, technical, internal, external, right? Are you in one of those prerequisite roles that I talked about before? Or will you need more prep to get into it? Kind of figure that out for yourself and what that looks like. I'd highly, highly, highly recommend finding a mentor to get into your first product role. Set you up for success. Find someone who's been doing it for a while, who's got good tips and tricks. And then go ahead and just apply and start to interview, right? And as you interview more and you apply more, you'll eventually, be able to land on that job. So your goals at the early stage, right, should be getting a role. And now you maybe, let's say, got one, right? Still work with your mentor. Do not drop your mentor after you get the job. Keep your mentor. There are so many things that are going to happen in your first role. I have another talk called 7 Things No One Tells You About Product that it would be really helpful that if a PM mentor you had was able to help you navigate through those kind of 7 common pitfalls. So don't get rid of your mentor. If anything, get a couple more. At this point, you also have your first Scrum team or engineering team, right? You're starting to do some things, get some ownership, and you've started really to deliver some value through features and products, right? Now, if you're trying to figure out if you're at the end, right, you can look at my last slide, and you can start to ask yourself these things, or you might be feeling some of these things. You might feel like you're ready for more. You maybe even want to switch your PM types. Maybe you're enterprise PM and you want to try consumer, or vice versa. You want better opportunities than maybe what's available to you in your company or in your current span of influence. And then you'll also know, because recruiters will start calling. If you see the recruiters on your LinkedIn, they're looking at your page, you're probably ready for something else, whether that's internal or external. So the next thing I want to talk about is the mid-level or the mid-senior type of role, right? So these are PMs with at least 3 years of experience. And you are managing a product line or a specific area, and you're probably at this point also mentoring other PMs. You really start to get into that. If you're out job hunting, for some companies, it is still called a product manager. At other companies, you might be a senior product manager. If you're at the Amazons or the Facebooks of the world, it might be L5 or L6. If you're at Microsoft, it's probably everything above level 61. So at this point, you have really full ownership and more undefined scope. People are trusting you with more. They're just giving you problems and you're really figuring out solutions, you know? You have a high emphasis too on the product strategy. So meaning like the road mapping part of it, you're really involved in roadmap. You're really setting out probably at this point more of a 3 to 5 year roadmap where you're collaborating very closely with your leadership on that. And you're also much more involved in the after. So the go-to-market, how your product is marketed, how people see it, interact with you. You're working more with the marketing and branding teams or the product marketers to really understand how your things are doing out there. You're definitely less supervised. At this point, you are kind of your own boss in this way, and you're really figuring things out. And then you're focused more on the exploration through execution. So not only are you focused on like getting products out the door, but you're also focusing on what are things that we're not thinking about? What are places that we're not involved in? You're doing projects in that space to understand where the future of your product area is going, or where your industry, depending on what you're building, is going. And you're spending a lot more time in exploration, a lot more time with customers, users, and understanding data. At this point, you're probably also a mentor. And you should be mentoring other people, you know, and sharing your knowledge. You know, there's not a right time to start mentoring, and you'll know when it happens, but ideally you should be a mentor at this place. And sometimes, depending on the company, you might be a people manager, right? So it really just depends how your company defines people management, but that is what the mid to senior level looks like. So if you were trying to get into this role, so let's say you're at early and now you're trying to get into mid, I'm going to tell you straight up, it's probably the toughest job to get. When you're trying to get to mid to senior, and you've already been an experienced product manager, the stakes are a little higher, the expectations are higher, so it can be harder to get that job. I find that's why in the folding chair initiative, I actually expanded it to help people get their first and second career, because I found that second was just as hard as first, if not harder. You're looking for opportunities probably to leverage your current experience right now. If you're at this point, if you're looking to get into it, you're probably thinking like, I've always worked on marketplace products. What is something I can do that's like marketplace, you know, or something similar, you know what I mean? Then there's also like, you're looking into your career network. You're probably trying to figure out like, hey, where are some of my friends going? I've noticed, you know, people that I started in PM are starting to get different jobs, and now you're getting some pressure on to maybe even think about where they're doing and where you can go. And then when you're looking for mid-level roles, you should also look at trends. This is a good time to start reading reports, reading what people are writing about the future of technology, start to follow maybe some thought leaders in the space, because depending on how you want to drive your career, you might want, if you're getting an opportunity to go look for a new job, you should probably be thinking about where's technology going, and making sure that you try to stay at the forefront of that, and you're not falling behind, and you're developing skills that'll be marketable later. Now, once you're at the end of this and you're ready to leave mid-level roles, you're probably already a subject matter expert. You've probably been doing it now for about 5 years. You've managed several features end to end. You are a pro in that. You could talk in an interview about 5, 10 features on end that you've developed and what those experiences look like. You've managed multiple business teams. So not just working with Scrum teams, you've probably worked with documentation teams. You have worked with product strategy teams, corporate strategy teams, marketing teams, all these different folks. You're not just working directly with your Scrum team anymore. You have influence in your hands on a lot of different buckets. You have a deep understanding of how to build and scale products. And at this point, there's probably no product you couldn't build or scale. If you didn't take 5 minutes to look at it, you could probably figure it out because you've built enough that you have that understanding. And you have a deep understanding of the go-to-market side. I feel like for me, that is where I can tell a PM has really elevated by how well they understand go-to-market. That they're still very much focused on like day-to-day functionality features and less focused on like how their product is bought, sold, and flows through the world and the economy. They're probably still needing to grow a bit in that space because that is really what sets product managers apart when you're starting to get to those most senior levels, is understanding strategy and go-to-market. So if you were doing your own map, this is what you might think about, okay? So if you're starting out, your scope of work is probably larger than what it was when you first got into product management. You're focused more on breadth than depth. And what I mean by that is you're focusing more on several different products and product interactions than where you used to maybe just work on one very small thing. And I find that it makes you a better product manager too, because the things that your mentees might challenge you on will really help you question your own approaches and really help you kind of harness your approaches and make them even more strategic and better. Now, if you're at the end of mid-level, you're probably asking these things of yourself. You're like, I want to be a manager. I think I'm ready to manage people. I've been a mentor for a long time. It's time to take the next step. You really want to own more. You're seeing where the business can go. And you're like, I don't want to just own this piece of the thing. I want to own the whole thing. I want to own the whole business unit, and you're starting to think about how you could be impactful at that level. And then you also want to be more focused on vision and strategy. So maybe, at the mid-level, you kind of always thought about the 3 to 5 year roadmap, but now you want to be in those strategic conversations about like, maybe we need to acquire a piece of software, maybe the build versus buy type of conversations. Maybe you want to be involved in more of reshaping and redefining where the product's going. Maybe you want to work on something net new that's in your company and go lead a new initiative or create a new business line, whatever those things are. So if you're having those conversations, this is really where you can be at. Here's where you should start. And if you're getting towards the intimate level, you're probably having these things. So if you're right in the middle, it's okay. It's okay. So think about what it would take for you to build up each of those skills that we talked about on the last slide to be able to move towards the next thing. So here's the last part. This is the late career versus senior. So PMs that are really at late or senior are probably 7 years or more experience in. You're for sure already managing other PMs. You're responsible for P&Ls. You're responsible for strategy. And the big tell is you should no longer be shipping product directly. If you are at mid to senior level and you're still shipping product directly, unless you've chosen to be a principal and you don't want to manage other people, you really should be figuring out ways to leverage other people to be shipping software, and you should be in a place where you are mentoring, developing, and coaching, not actually doing in that space. So if you were looking for these roles online, you might see senior product manager, principal product manager, group product manager, or director. If you're at those Amazons versus Facebooks, these are the L6, L7 roles. If you're at Microsoft, this is level 63 and upwards. And at this point, you're the owner of a line of business. So think of a line of business as something, and companies define it differently. Like they'll have like first level, second level, third level lines of business, right? So think of like small things that would be their own SKU or a combination of multiple SKUs. That would be a line of business. You have much more of an emphasis on people development and teaching them what you've learned about building products. You're a lot more mindful and thoughtful about the future and the vision for your product as well. You will probably report to your VP, you'll report to your GM or head of product. So also a good tell if you're trying to figure out what do people consider me. This is not necessarily always true, right? You can still be like an entry-level person and report to these people as well. It really just depends on structure. But if you're not sure if you're senior, this is something that can help you decide. You're a lot more focused on the next big thing. That is the question you're trying to answer a lot. That's the question that's being posed to you, whether it's the next big thing in your product or the next big thing for your entire company. That's a lot of times where your mind's at. And your people manager. That is the biggest thing. You know, PM roles are typically IC for a long time until you are really at the most senior levels. That is really where you get into people management. So it's not like other roles where people management comes in maybe at the mid to senior level. People management in product really comes in when you're at the late and like super senior levels. So if you were trying to figure out what's going on and find those late career or senior things, you're looking for roles that focus on strategy or companies that are saying that we're lacking vision and we're looking for a visionary. That's where you really want to go in at. That's where you can be more impactful. A lot of times, if you're at a mid to senior level, there are so few roles at that higher level that you're looking to get into that you probably have to go external. Sometimes you can do it internal, but more often than not, you're going to have to go external to get those. And you're looking for the opportunity to be a people manager. If you're going through any of those things, that is really what late career looking for roles looks like. So you're going to be wanting to ask recruiters like, hey, is there a people management opportunity here or opportunity to grow and develop a team? That is really how you get into those roles. And when it's time to leave those roles, you might be considering leaving product management altogether. You may just be ready for something completely new. This is really where you want to decide, do you want to be a product executive, like a head of product or a GM, or do you want to try something completely different, like getting into corporate strategy? Product management is really a foundation for so many different jobs. You might want to get into the VC space, you know, especially if you've been in startup space for a long time. Maybe you're at a point where you're like, hey, I do want to do something different, but it might be my own thing. And you might want to consider even being a startup founder at that point too. So it really just depends on where you want to go. And there's so many career opportunities that I haven't even listed out here. But these are some of the kind of 3 popular paths or 4 popular paths I see people go. So if you're not thinking about switching out of product altogether, you're probably thinking, hey, it's time to be a product exec. You have a deep understanding at that point of how to do the people management stuff, plus everything you learned at all those other levels. And you have a deep understanding of how to grow a product and do strategy and things like that. So you could come in and set strategic vision for an entire line of business, an entire group of people. And that is when it's time. And that's when you really kind of hit that peak in late level career. So let's say you were trying to come up with your own map for whether you are, for what to do here. And you're at that late level or, you know, that lead level product management. At this point, you should be a product management expert. Going into this part of your career, you should be an expert. No doubt about it. Nobody can question that. You have, you know, best practices and methodologies. You've got war stories on how to do things. And you got these tried and true approaches. You represent your product externally at that point too, meaning like you're going to conferences, you're being trusted to have those strategic customer conversations. And you're definitely still mentoring because mentoring is important and I'm always going to advocate for that, right? And that mentoring, depending on what type of mentor you are, you can use to move into becoming a people manager. So at that stage, you know, you really want to figure out like, how can I become a people manager? Figure out ways to execute your own vision and strategy and look for roles that are going to allow you to do that. You should really be overseeing cross functions. You know, like you ever see the product manager that no matter what part of the business you're in, they always talk to that product manager. That is that lead person, and that's what you want to do. And when you've really kind of made it at the lead level, you shouldn't be delivering products. That is very important. Get out of doing that at that point. Your delivery should be for early and mid people. And when you're in that late, kind of like senior lead stage, you should really be empowering the people who work for you to do that. And when you're done, you're probably just ready to move on. You decided that you'd either have liked to switch functions, or you've decided that you want to be executive, and you'll use the last slide to figure out which way you want to go with that. And you can tell too, because the recruiters will change. It won't be the regular recruiters anymore. You'll start getting headhunters who call you with opportunities to say like, hey, would you like to come be the head of product for this? Would you like to come be the VP of product for this thing? And that is really when you know, hey, it might be time to kind of take this thing to a whole nother level, right? So I want to wrap it up. We talked about a lot of things today. First, we started off with kind of like these 6 key categories of what product management are. And what you can do there. And you can do any combination of these things, right? Remember, like I said before, it's never cookie cutter. You might do something in one role, switch roles and do another thing. If you're on one of those mixed use products, you might get an opportunity to do a couple of those things in one suite. But it's important to understand those categories because it'll help you navigate your career. Remember, every level of product is different, and as you move through, your scope and influence should increase as your skills do. Product management isn't really flat. It's not a job where you're just constantly doing the same thing over and over again. You really should be taking on more and more and more as you develop. And evaluate where you are versus where you want to be. So I kind of showed you all these different levels, so figure out, are you at the early stage? Are you at the mid stage? What are you lacking that keeps you from those more senior stages if that's where you want to go? Or if you want to do something else, what are some of the skills that you can develop in this current role that'll set you up for success there? And then the last thing is, remember, you don't have to be a product manager forever. This role and this career is really a great precursor for so many other careers in tech. So think about that too, as you've started to develop your space, your name, your brand, and you know what you want. Do you want to be a product manager forever, or do you want to try something else? And remember, there's so many things out there that you can do. And that wraps up my conversation today. So thank you so much for listening and learning. If you have questions or you want to give me feedback in the session, please do drop a line to me on LinkedIn. Otherwise, thanks for coming. I appreciate it.